In a perfect world, as a filmmaker and as a cinematographer, you would always have the chance to finesse each shot, spend time lighting and refining each setup. You would get to choose the location, maybe paint the walls so that your subject stands out. Build your lights into the set and have total control, separating your subject from the background. But we all know in reality, you work with what you have, and sometimes you have to shoot a lot of pages in a small space with very little room to move, and you have to make the most of what you get. In this episode, we're going to look at shooting in a small space with multiple actors, getting multiple pages very, very quickly by rigging the entire set with LED tubes and then turning them on and off depending on what your angle is and what your shot is. I was inspired to try this from the TV show Succession, where they often shoot multiple pages with multiple cameras in a very small space by rigging in a 360 way beforehand, then coming in and really using the lighting board, the DMX, to turn lights on and off depending on where they're looking. They do this often in boardrooms with lots of glass, looking out onto daylight, basically a nightmare scenario, and they're able to get something that works and that actually looks really good just by which lights they're choosing to turn on at what time. Now, Succession is a $100 million TV show on HBO. I wanted to do this in a small bedroom with two actors shooting a scene with just LED lights. Now, I couldn't drill into the wall to mount them, so I used magnets, a combination of small pieces of metal, gaffer taped to the ceiling, and then these Kupo universal LED tube holders to attach the Nanlite Pavo tubes along the far end, the window side. On the back of the room, I was able to balance one on top of the air conditioner. On the other side of the room, I was able to mount one on the top of this painting. Because the Pavo tubes have an angled base, it just sort of sat there. For the final side of the room was really, really tricky because to mount it to the ceiling, it would have been too high. So I used another Kupo accessory, the aluminium baby boom, which is sort of like a lighting stand where the top pulls out and extends into a boom. So you get a boom stand, but in a light stand configuration that's very, very versatile. I was able to mount this above the bunk bed. I also used it later on, which we'll talk about for close-ups. Now for the windows side, shooting towards the windows, I had the window side lights turned on, which gave the actress a backlight. And then also had the side light turned on to give her some fill on that side. This meant she was able to walk, 180 degrees of the room and be lit on both sides. With this type of lighting setup, you want to avoid front lighting your subject so that they don't seem too flat. So you're typically putting the person in a corner, shooting into the V of the room, and then turning on the two sides behind them. This gives them a far side key and a backlight. And then when you move the camera, you turn those off and turn the new V on. This first shot was trickier because she was walking back and forth between two sides of the house. When I went in for her close-up, I left the camera on the tripod, punched in on the sensor on the same lens. So I went from a 35 to the equivalent of a 55 lens. I moved the camera in about a foot to give me a little bit extra. I turned up the lights on the back side of the wall and then down the lights on the front side. Though if I had done multiple cameras, which I think is how Succession shoots, I probably could have got both the wide and the close-up in one take. When I swapped around to shoot the reverse, the other actor's single, all I had to do was turn off the window side lights and turn on the painting side lights. So this whole lighting change took about 10 seconds. This is great because it allows you to maintain your momentum as a filmmaker. The actors don't have to leave and come back, and they're able to stay in the scene, and you're able to get your shots quicker, and that definitely helps your actor's performance. When I went into this actor's single, because she was right in against the wall, it was difficult to get a light close enough to give her a flattering light. I just swung the light I had on the baby boom stand across to light her single and give her a much closer source of light, which resulted in a softer source and a more flattering image. As cinematographers, we tend to aim for a far side key in every single shot, but when your actor is looking from left to right to left to right and moving, it's almost impossible to maintain that. But I think what I ended up with was an image that looked nice, that looked natural, and that sold the shot. And importantly, the turnaround from the wide to the close, lighting wise, was as easy as just swinging the boom from one side of the room to the other. So it was just 10-15 seconds. I was running all of the Pavo tubes through the Namlight app on my phone, so I was able to change brightness remotely, change color temperature. We didn't get into any RGB stuff, but that's possible as well. And I was able to maintain that momentum and get those shots really, really quickly. This is critical if you have a more complex scene where your actors are moving around the room, maybe they're swapping positions, maybe you have 3 or more actors and you're using multiple cameras. You basically just shoot until the light looks bad and then stop, make a lighting change, and then keep shooting. But you can do it all from your phone when you've rigged this room beforehand. Another great thing about using these Pavo tubes with the Kupo LED holders is that even if your camera were to catch them in the shot, they just look like the lighting in the room. It's not some huge HMI with barn doors that looks totally out of place. The next sequence is where the 2 women are sitting down on the bunk bed. This was really tough to light because ideally I would be lighting from the far side, which would be inside the bunk itself. This didn't seem practical and it would look kind of odd. So I swung the baby boom again right in front of their faces. I tried a couple different angles to see, depending on which way they were looking through the scene, what looked good. And because the light was on a boom and not on just a plain stand, I was able to shoot underneath it, get some more coverage in that way, and get some flattering angles. To attach the longer light, I used the Kupo tube light clamp, which is a dual clamp that goes to a pin, which you can then thread into the baby boom mount. So you don't need an extra clamp or gobo to attach it. An LED tube is only a couple inches high, but in the right direction with the right closeness actually provides a very soft and flattering light. So this was my overall strategy, basically rigging the room and then having one wild light that I could swing in and out, move around for the close-up on this baby boom. We shot 1.5 pages in just under an hour and it took me around 30 minutes to rig the room. You have to be conscious of what surface you're taping the metal to that the magnet is going to stick to. Ideally, you want it to be clean so the dust doesn't cause it to fall. For the shorter tubes, you just need 1, but you definitely want to use 2 of the clamps as far apart as possible for the full-length 4-foot tubes. This was a little bit of an experiment for me. I hadn't worked like this before, but I found the combination of the clamps and the tubes worked really, really well to get multiple setups very, very quickly and have the versatility to just be turning lights on and off rather than moving them around. Everything in the video is linked in the description. If you want more insight into cinematography, I have a cinematic lighting tutorial on Canon Masterclass. That and another 40-something courses on every aspect of filmmaking that you can get for a low annual price. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.